In the previous video here on Flock, we toured the ornamental trees and shrubs at Coldwater Pond Nursery in the Finger Lakes region. In this video, Ted was kind enough to show us how he grafts some of his ornamentals.
So what I'm going to show you is modified side veneer grafting of a conifer. We're going to graft a concolor fir scion onto a Conifer rootstock. And this is the technique we kind of use for just about all of our grafting, whether it's a deciduous plant or a conifer. The basic technique's the same. Normally though, we're doing this January, February timeframe. So I'm cleaning the scion right now and taking off the needles. On the firs, they're challenging to clean because you have to cut every needle. And so that's one of the jobs my mom gets stuck with in the wintertime, is sitting here and cutting needles off thousands of fir scions. The spruce come off a little easier. Sometimes you can just scrape them off. And white pines and things like that, they oftentimes pull off pretty easy, but sometimes we still have to cut them.
And what cutting tool are you actually using? What is that called?
So this is a bonsai tool. This is what they call a concave cutter. And it's used in the bonsai community for making very close cuts on a trunk so that it heals over smooth and doesn't show a wound. And we found they work really good for a lot of our general nursery tasks because it cuts very flush. My regular Felco pruners, who you said you were going to go see Felco later today, they'll cut pretty close too, but they'll oftentimes leave a little stub. Whereas, and that'll cause my knife to possibly jump when I'm doing the grafting. So using these, or sometimes we'll use very small scissors and cut them off that way. So once I get about a third of it cleaned up, that's enough working area for me.
You're basically like shaving the fir.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
Giving a quick shave and a haircut there. So that's a scion ready to graft. In the wintertime, we'll pre-prep them and store them in a refrigerator. And then we do the grafting when they're ready.
Why do you store them in the refrigerator?
We can't do enough grafting in a day to utilize everything we can collect in a day. And we try to collect scions on days that are above freezing. And there's not too many of those in the wintertime. So when we get a day that's like, hey, this is a good collecting day, that's all we'll do. And we'll go out and we'll collect, and then we'll put them in a cooler, and we'll keep them there under moist conditions until we can graft them. During that time while we're waiting to graft, then we'll pre-prep them and get them all ready to go.
And then the cooler keeps them above freezing?
Just. So we try to hold them at about 34, ideally 34
And they're not
degrees.
losing any of their moisture in there, basically.
They're bagged. The conifers, we actually add moisture to the bag, and that keeps them very hydrated.
What are you doing? Are you using like a wet paper towel, or how do you?
Sometimes you'll just take a water bottle and do a little spritz in there.
Okay.
Sometimes if we have a whole cooler full of just conifers, we'll actually humidify the whole cooler all the time.
Okay.
The deciduous plants, though, we'll store them dry. We found they actually get disease in them if we store them with moisture in the bags.
I see, like a mildew or something like that?
Or Pseudomonas in the maples, things like that. So those will store them dry in the bag, but keep the humidity in the cooler very high, so they don't dehydrate, but they don't have free moisture on the stem itself. So this is another job we usually do ahead of time in the fall. We'll go through and clean up all the rootstocks and get them ready to graft. And so in this case, we'd take out the top and probably these side branches. And this will give enough foliage for the rootstock to stay alive and do its job, but let light in when the scion is grafted on there. If I had left that top on, this would be in shade, and it just doesn't get enough light to do its job. So the actual grafting, we use Tina grafting knives, and they're made in Germany. And the grafting knives are beveled on one side. They have a flat side here and a bevel there. They come in left and right hand versions. And the one-sided bevel allows me to make a very flat cut. If it's like a regular knife where it's beveled two sides, it wants to either dig in or dig out, and I can't make that flat cut that we need for grafting. So it's real important that a grafting knife, no matter what brand or type it is only beveled on one side.
I see.
I also usually put on safety tape. I wrap my fingers that can be exposed to the knife. so that I don't get any nasty cuts. The knife, I try to keep it sharp enough to shave with, and so one quick cut can hurt pretty quick.
Yeah. How do you have like a little stone, or how do you?
Yeah, I have a razor strop. So I try not to stone this knife unless I accidentally drop it or do some serious damage to it.
Okay.
I haven't had to stone this in about 2 years, but I do strop it pretty much once a day. I can do 300 to 600 grafts a day, and one stropping is usually good enough for that. If I'm doing a real difficult species that's very sensitive to the knife, has to be super sharp, I might strop a couple times. So my strop has different grades of diamond grit impregnated into the leather. So I have just plain leather here, and the coarsest one, which is here, has a coarse diamond, and then a medium diamond grit, a fine diamond, and then finally I'll finish with the leather.
I mean, this does look well used.
Yeah, it's got a lot of stropping time.
Yeah.
I just bought a new one, which is a little bigger,
Yeah.
but I haven't had a chance to implement it yet.
Yeah.
It's actually just been sitting. And then we'll tie in the graft with these special grafting rubber bands. Some people use tape. There's a grafting tape and various other methods. I have found this, for me, doing 600 grafts a day, I need something that I can do really fast, and this works out best. I can
Gosh,
tie
they look
them
like
in
blue
quick.
linguini or something.
They do, don't they?
Yeah.
What's the difference between this versus a normal rubber band?
This one has been developed with characteristics that'll hold long enough for the graft to knit in, but not stay on there, that'll choke the plant out and girdle it.
I see.
So eventually the sunlight will degrade it and it'll just fall apart.
Okay.
We actually remove them here because we want to know how good that graft union is before it goes to the customer.
Right.
But some nurseries leave them on and they just naturally disappear over time.
But you're usually you're mainly using them for speed.
For me, yeah, for sure. A lot of the online videos show the tape being used, and I have tried it, and I have some. I just cannot get proficient at it, and I'm really fast with them, so I stick with
Yeah,
what
I'm
works.
curious to see how y'all do it.
So the first cut I make is on the rootstock, and I'm just looking for a place where it's clean and flat. I've got a wound here, I don't want to do that. There's a slight dish here, so that's kind of attractive. I may be able to get in there with a knife nicely. This side's also pretty good. I got a small wound, but that shouldn't be an issue. So I'm gonna go right here. It's nice and smooth, fairly straight. My first cut is gonna be about 1 inch or 1.5 inches long. Not going real deep, just deep enough in so that I can expose the cambial tissue, which is the light green and ivory tissue. I cut a little bit into the heartwood. Some people don't like to do that, but I found I can get a pretty nice graft union going at this depth here. Then on the roots, on the scion, I look for where I want my back to be. So if I were to make this the back, my scion is going to be casting away from there.
Yeah.
And then the tree's always going to be having this lean
out,
to it.
yeah.
So I actually prefer to do my back cut on the side where it forces the scion into the rootstock and will force it to grow straight at that point. Just a little detail that I think makes a difference.
Really important detail.
So my first cut is very similar to the rootstock cut, just kind of a thin, but it's real important that it's very straight. I don't want any dishing to it because that'll leave an air gap where it matches to the rootstock, and where there's an air gap, the tissue will have trouble bonding. Then I'll flip it over. I leave that flap on so that I can lay my fingers there without putting anything into the wound, and do the same thing starting at the same point. The same thing on this side. I'm going to start a little deeper there. And this time I'll take it totally off. So I have a bird's mouth discard, and then this is the scion with its backside and front side cut. And you'll notice I did a compound wedge. It's wider here than it is on this side. And you'll see why I did that when we get to here. So my goal is to line up the cambial tissue of the scion with the cambial tissue on the rootstock. But you'll notice that this is wider than this. So I'm not going to get cambial match on both sides, on this side or that side. So by making the compound wedge, when I put this in here and get the light right, I can match my cambial tissue on this side. And on the other side, because I made the compound wedge, this will start to close up and it'll rematch the cambial on the flap to the rootstock. And that'll make a graft union that's healed on both sides. It may only have cambial match on one side, but everything will knit together and it'll be just as strong that way.
Now, do you have to always do the cut on both sides? I understand the principle of actually having on two sides to wedge in, but do you, I've seen folks who don't do, like just slide it in and then just wrap it, and they only do one. Can you only do one, or? You
can. It's best to have at least one side match. The ideal is both sides. The perfect graft is the diameters match, and so then the two slices match. The cambial tissue will match on both sides. That hardly ever happens.
Yeah.
At least for me in ornamental grafting anyway. I think in the fruit world it does, but so where if you just do two flat cuts instead of that compound wedge and put it in there and line it up on the one side, it'll knit in on that side, but this other side's going to have a big gap. And the tree, you can build that with callus tissue, but it takes a long time.
Yeah.
And so it's that much longer, there's a chance to break it or disease to get in there, or things like that. So once I have it inserted and lined up, which I need to realign it here, then I'll start the tie-in process. Now this time of year, the trees are very sappy, so...
Which is part of the reason why you do it in the winter.
Yeah, they're very slippery right now. So I'll start the rubber band with 2 wraps, and now it's self-holding, and now I can make an adjustment.
I see.
Get the cambial tissue to just line up real nice. Scoot that in just a little bit, and now I'll make the remainder laps. I'm not worried about overlapping the rubber band because normally we coat this in a 50-50 mix of beeswax and paraffin wax. And there she is.
Yeah.
Usually I leave a little bow that we can just pull and unwrap it quick and easy. This rubber band is one meant for a small diameter Japanese maple, and we got a big diameter conifer here, so I ran out of rubber band to leave the little loop. And you can see on this side it closed up. Even though we didn't have cambial tissue, then that'll make a really strong double-sided knit.
Now what happens now that you've done this a little later in the season? Will this take,
I don't know.
Or you don't know?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to cut this one
will
other
be part of the
branch off.
experiment.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll put a bag over this. The conifers need high humidity after grafting, no matter the time of year that we do it. And this one here, being it's already started to grow, I'm going to put a Ziploc bag over it, put some humidity in it, and we'll keep it in the shade and see what happens.
Yeah.
We might surprise us.
Yeah.
It's spring, there's lots of energy.
Yes, exactly.
So then that is done in the winter. And then by summertime, we'll start to head back these rootstocks and let the scion grow. And we'll usually on the conifers, we'll leave some rootstock on through the first winter. And then the following spring, we're at this stage where the rootstock is flushed out again, the scion is flushed out, and we're ready to remove the rootstock completely. So again, I'll use the bonsai cutters and I'll flake out some of the wax so I can tell where the top of the graft union is, and just lay the cutters in there.
Wow.
And then remove the rootstock. I'm gonna do a second little cleanup.
And that will just callus over then?
That'll callus over, and that's the other reason we like the bonsai cutters. It makes a concave hole there, a cut, and the callus tissue will build flat across.
Now what are you growing this in?
Oh, so this is buckwheat hulls. We discovered we have an awful time in the greenhouse with the moisture level and the high humidity with moss.
Yeah.
And the moss will coat the top of the pot, and then we have trouble with water management. They're either too dry or too wet, they're never happy. So we tried an experiment a few years ago using buckwheat hulls from the buckwheat mill in Penn Yan, and it almost eliminated the moss problem.
So it's like a waste product essentially.
To them, it's a byproduct. Yeah. They sell it as bagged garden mulch, although it's so light, I can't imagine using it in the garden.
Fly away in the
exactly.
breeze, yeah.
But for us, it completely eliminated a huge labor problem for
Yeah,
us and a
fascinating.
cultural problem. And so we really like it. So now we top dress all our small plants that are in the greenhouse.
Right, so you're only using it for top dressing.
Correct.
Yep, to prevent moss growth.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
For sure.
Well, thank you so much for showing us your
You're welcome.
grafting techniques. This is really
Yeah.
wonderful.
If you're finding value in the videos we produce, we'd love for you to subscribe and hit the notifications button here on YouTube. We're committing 10% of our Google AdSense revenue back to projects in the Finger Lakes region, so your viewership is not only appreciated, but contributes to the community here. We'll see you in the next video.